Well, the Afghan government has suffered further setbacks in trying to hold off the seemingly relentless advance of the Taliban. The humanitarian crisis is deepening there as tens of thousands are forced to flee the fighting. The militants are estimated to control 2/3 of Afghanistan.
Shaky and shocking video purports to show Taliban fighters celebrating victory after taking a town in Farah province in the west. They appear to be dragging the body of a killed opponent. In images too disturbing to show, they then throw the corpse into a pit and begin shooting at it. And it's scenes like that which have prompted many Afghans to leave their rural homes and seek sanctuary in cities, like these people in a makeshift camp at a park in Kabul. Tens of thousands of families have been displaced, and there's not enough food or other relief material for them.
The displaced people are in a terrible and frustrating situation, but the government has not sent a representative here to help.
As the Afghan government struggles to contain the Taliban's military advances, it's also appealing to the world community for humanitarian support.
We call on the international community and international institutions to help as soon as possible to provide food and non-food items to the many people displaced in Afghanistan.
Many have questioned the very speedy withdrawal of the US-led international forces, which is due to be completed this month. But criticism is also being directed at neighbouring Pakistan for not using its influence over the Taliban to end the bloodshed and rights abuses. Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi rejected the criticism and said his country would, quote, play its role to facilitate the Afghan peace process.
We have done whatever we could, and we will continue to do what we can for peace, for stability, and for regional connectivity. It is in sync with the agenda of our government.
The return of the Taliban and the possibility of a lengthy civil war are likely to prompt an exodus of refugees, many heading west towards Europe. Greece was often the first point of arrival in the EU during the 2016 migration crisis. Athens says it's not able to handle another such wave of arrivals.
Well, joining us for more is Aisha Khurram. She's a law student at Kabul University and a former Afghan youth representative to the UN. Aisha, thanks for joining us. You're talking to us from the Afghan capital, Kabul. What is the situation like where you are now?
Well, starting from Kabul, right now, each and every day, there are flights from the airport that take thousands of passengers from Kabul that are fleeing their homes and seeking refuge in foreign land in different countries, some of them to some of the neighboring countries. And at the moment, people who were living in the provincial capitals or the places that are right now under Taliban's control, they are each and every day fleeing their homes, and there is a flood of IDPs sweeping into the capital city Kabul, and there are right now thousands of refugees that are also leaving Kabul. But the people who are coming to Kabul, they perceive that the safest of place for them is Kabul, that isn't far to face the same fate as other provincial capitals by the end of August when US troops fully withdraw from the country. So the people who are relying on Kabul as the safest of places might be facing the same disaster they faced in their own homes.
If we can just go back to something you said, there have been reports sourced to US intelligence that the Taliban could take Kabul within 90 days if they continue at their current pace. How many people, as you mentioned, are preparing to leave the city already?
A lot of people. Every day there are flights that are taking thousands of passengers out of the country. And some of the people, they do not have the luxury of even leaving the country and they cannot afford it financially. So the people coming to Kabul, they rely on the government, they rely on the international community that focus their help to the capital city Kabul all these years. So right now, IDPs, they do not even have the support that international community provided for the Kabul itself in the last 20 years. There's no humanitarian response provided for the IDPs that are without shelter, without food, and that are losing even their kids because of the lack of food and problems they are facing in Kabul.
Aisha, are you at risk as the Taliban closes in?
Well, everybody is at risk, but specifically in the past few years, when there was a chain of targeted assassinations, when there was attack on my university, on my faculty, people like me were supposed to be killed and assassinated in order to pave the ground for the repressive regime of Taliban to revive once again in Afghanistan, for the voices like us to shut down and not to speak again. But we cannot afford to leave the people who are relying on our support at this moment. So yes, our lives are at risk, but we are committed to fight as long as we can.
While acknowledging that risk, with how much hope are you looking to the United Nations for a peaceful resolution to the conflict in Afghanistan?
Well, at this moment, when it comes to, first of all, to the United States and NATO forces, there is a strong sense of disgust and disappointment. Nobody is relying on their help anymore. But United Nations, it has a big role, an important role to play. It was created for this moment to save humanity from sinking into a chaos that would be irreversible. So a while ago, when there was an urgent meeting convened by the United Nations Security Council, hopes were very high and people expected an urgent response to be made by the international community. But soon it was revealed that national interest and the politics supersede humanity. And 75 years after United Nations creation, we're still witnessing the same mistake to be made when the United Nations was not created yet. So unless the United Nations take decisive action in order to save Afghanistan from collapsing into chaos, we will be witnessing a very dangerous humanitarian crisis once again.
Aisha Khurram, thank you so much for your insight.